Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you find yourself today. Welcome to today's INC Squared Security Briefings webinar. Today we're kicking off a three-part series with our event sponsor Infoblox, and today we'll be digging into remediating the threats by bridging the islands of security. Many of us work in organizations with different products and services from different vendors, all to try to address our cybersecurity needs. But the problem comes down to stitching that crazy quilt of product together into something useful and integrating it in a way that you can share critical information between all of those various silos. Today, I'm joined by Chintan Udeshi, who's a product marketing manager from Infoblox, who's going to be walking us through a presentation for probably the next 45 minutes or so. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't make this interactive. If something comes up on a slide, drop a question. We'll get time at the end. We'll go through those, and hopefully we'll get to all of them, but no guarantees because you guys tend to pepper us with far more questions that we have time for. Before we kick off, though, a couple of housekeeping items. I mentioned the questions tab. Please make good use of that. Also, over in the attachments and links section, I noticed a number of you have already started picking through that. We do have a copy of today's slide deck. There's a lot of material in today's slides, so I highly recommend grabbing that PDF because it'll be useful reference for you after the fact. Also have a great infographic on the cybersecurity ecosystem playbook, as well as a number of other goodies. And a couple of links over to the ISC Squared community where you can connect with like-minded individuals and also some of the member perks. Do us a favor though, but at the end, please take a moment and rate how we did. Don't just pick the number of stars, give us some insights. What did you like? What didn't work out so well? We like to tune these as we go, and we take these comments very seriously to make sure that we hit the nail on the head every time for you guys. And another reminder, CPE. I know many of you, that's probably also top of mind, just like today's topic. Those will automatically post to your account. However, it takes about a week or so. So don't panic, but if you don't see that, you can contact member services and they'll help you out with that. So with that, Chetan, I'm going to turn things over to you. We got a little agenda up here. Take us through your presentation and I'll keep an eye on those questions.
Sure. Thank you, Tim. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on where you are in the world at this point. I'm Chintan Udeshi, and I'll be talking about bridging the silo islands of security within your organization. So here is the agenda for today. So we will begin with security operation challenges and how if we have too many tools but they don't work together, what problems does that create? What does the ideal solution look like? So after bridging the silos, what will be the ideal solution and how it will help your organization? Then we will look at some of the Infoblox solution that we provide, and then we will go through some of the use cases. So let's begin with challenges. So today, as you can see, there are thousands of vendors out there with so many different products, and security has always been the layered approach, which is like companies keep on adding more and more products to the mix as and when the needs arise, or they want to add additional solution or get additional protection for the organization. But there's a problem with this approach. It creates such an overflow of the data that it is difficult for the organization or security ops team to go through the critical information. So currently, there is no ability to understand where to focus on and how to decide the priority, because each and every tool has their own dashboard and they all create their own incidents. But it is difficult to correlate incidents from different tools, and that makes the prioritization of incidents very difficult. So at the same time, there are not enough people, time and resources to actually get through the important things that the organization wants to focus on. And as a result, there are silos within the organization. So because of this, first of all, the problem is there's a poor visibility. So considering there are so many different tools, you get the siloed visibility, but you don't have the overall visibility into all the things that are going on in the organization. Secondly, there is a lack of context. So as I mentioned before, all the tools generate their own incidents, but they don't talk to each other, because of which it is difficult to get the context. And thirdly, if there are so many incidents and SOC team doesn't know which are the critical incidents, it will take more time. They don't know which incidents to focus on first, and even if they find out critical, find out which incident is really critical, it will take them lot of time to get context or get more information about the incident, and because of it, it will take a lot of time for the SOC team to respond to that threats faster. So, as you can see, I'll just quote some of the data based on some of the cybersecurity reports that were published recently. So the average cost of the corporate data breaches is like increased by 15% to 3.5 million, and then 56% of the organizations say that they are unlikely or highly unlikely that they would be able to detect a sophisticated attack, and 37% say that the real-time insight on the cyber risk is not currently available. So, and at the same time, attackers are getting better and faster at what they do. And because of this, it is getting more and more difficult for the organizations to respond to threats faster. So there was an ESG report that was published on security operation challenges priorities in 2017, and it says that keeping up with the volume of security alerts and lack of integration between different security tools are the two biggest challenges related to security operations. And according to the same report or survey, investing in technologies to automate security operations, threat detection technologies, and creating security operations by integrating multiple tools are the top security operations priorities. As a result of that, organizations are investing heavily in automating uh, in either automation or orchestration of incident response, so that they can improve the collaboration between cyber security and IT operations team within the organization, so that they can keep the volume of the security alerts down, make the decisions on prioritization of alerts faster, and once that is done, they can automate the processes so that they can respond to the threats or incidents faster. So as you can see, network team and security team have different priority. Network team is focused on getting a high availability, and they are looking at the network infrastructure such as routers, switches, and in order to monitor all the network changes or monitor the network, they are looking at the network logging and monitoring tools. On the other hand, security team is focused on risk mitigation. Their overall aim is to protect the data that is within the organization, and they focus on the security. So security infrastructure consists of firewalls, endpoints, SIM devices, vulnerability management, and so on. And they focus on security. They look at the security logging and monitoring, as I said, for example, SIM. So as you can see, the network, so both the teams are focusing on both the teams have independent logging system, and they don't share information with each other very easily. So all of this makes security and incident efforts unnecessarily difficult due to manual processes. At the same time, these processes are inefficient, and ultimately data sharing takes a lot of time, and as a result, whenever there are changes to the network, or whenever there's a threat within the organization, it takes lot of time for a SOC team to respond to the threat. So as you can see in this particular slide, so cyber security is paramount, and enterprise try to adopt a layered approach uh, which enhances security architecture, but essentially results in too many uh, different tools. So because of all these things, first of all, it is difficult to identify indicators of compromise due to constant overflow of the data. Secondly, there's a lack of understanding on where security teams should focus on. Third, security team face lack of qualified personnel and automation of security processes. And finally, uh, visibility, a lack of network visibility and control from a single place is very difficult considering there are thousands of vendors. And so and at the same time, not all, each and every organization have the tools and automation to correlate the data. So this makes this makes it difficult for the especially the smaller organizations who don't have the more resources to correlate data from different tools and then respond to the threats faster. So all these things will lead to, first of all, poor security posture, because infected endpoints are not isolated before the infection or the malware spreads to the rest of the devices within the organization. And because of this, there's a high chances that data is at risk, meaning data might leave the organization. Second of all, there's an inefficient operations. So as I mentioned before, there are too many incidents, too many tools, too many dashboards, but the problem is they don't talk to each other, because of which uh, SOC team doesn't have the context on which incidents to focus on, and because of this, it is difficult for them to respond to threats faster. And finally, there's a lack of agility. So all the as I mentioned in the previous slide, network team and security team have different priorities and they look at different logging. Because of this, the logging data transfer is more or less manual, and this will make it difficult for the organization to respond to threats faster. So let me give you an example. Uh, so let's say there are two. So there are. Let's look at the example of the true traffic incident. So here on highway. So as you can see, the traffic. So there is an accident at at the place where it is marked 1, and let's say that accident is really minor. So there was a minor crash and both the cars moved out of the way, or they moved outside the lane uh, into the shoulder, and because of this there is no lanes blocked and the traffic is still flowing smoothly. On the other hand, uh, on the top of the image you can see number 2. Let's say there is an 18-wheeler truck which has overturned, and this because of this it is spilling the toxic waste which might be detrimental to the vehicles around. At the same time, it is blocking 3 lanes. So uh, based on that, I think incident 2 is more critical and incident 1 is less critical, since in case of incident 1 or the accident 1, traffic is still flowing smoothly. So customer or the pickup service still have to help the people who are involved in accident at at 1, but the second accident is more critical, considering it is the truck that is overturned is spilling the toxic material, and then at the same time 3 lanes are blocked, because of which the traffic is impacted. So now, based on that, so complete information, so all this information, so Infoblox, so getting this information as in which is major and which is minor is very critical, so that the emergency services or the police or can respond to, can know which one is the major incident and which one is a minor incident. Based on that, they will know, okay, considering incident 2 is major, let's respond to that first because that is impacting a lot of people. On the other hand, incident 1 is comparatively minor, so we should still respond to it, but that is not the number one priority. So considering that, so we will send, considering for accident 2 is more critical, they can send the paramedics to the place where second accident occurred, and then they can send the fire services or fire brigade to control the fire if there is any fire to the incident 2. And then in case of 1 and 2, they also need to know when whether accident 1 and 2 are related or not. So, and then considering accident 1 is comparatively minor, they can just, it is low priority, they can just send one police car, and that's about it because they have moved over and they are not blocking any of the traffic. So this was a simple analogy where which explains why getting the context on the accidents is really, really critical. Both the accidents were initially reported, but based on the additional information that emergency services got, they knew that accident 2 is more critical, and then based on that, they were able to dispatch the necessary services so that traffic is unblocked and more problems can be avoided. So similar thing. So in the context of Infoblox, so DNS, so in the context of networking and a SOC team, DNS has a ubiquitous visibility and control points. So DNS can analyze threats on network using the scale at cloud. Then it can block all the device communication based to the bad sites using RPZ feeds, and it can notify other security tools on what is happening along with the context for further remediation. So based on this, as you can see, so how if all the tools are working together, it will provide three things. First of all, centralized visibility. So in this case, centralized visibility, and if they have centralized visibility across all the devices will help them will help them know what is going on in the entire environment or the entire network. Secondly, it will provide the curated threat intelligence data. So if the data is received in real time and it is correlated between different tools, they will be able to correlate the incidents, and then based on that, they will be able to decide the priority, as in which incident has the higher priority and which incident we need to respond to first. Similar to the accident case where accident number 2 was more critical, and because of that they had to respond to that first and with more emergency. And finally, better agility. So integration, considering they have all the information in one place, they can easily correlate the data, and at the same time they can respond to the threats or the network changes faster. So based on this analogy can be applied to network operation and the security operations as well. So getting centralized visibility, context for the prioritization, as well as which will allow SOC team to automate the threat response faster, and it will ultimately allow them to contain the threats more easily and more quickly. So now let's look at what does the ideal solution look like. So we want to make sure that all the tools are working together so that we can bridge the silos. So first of all, it will provide increased SOC maturity. So if there's a centralized visibility and there's a context on prioritization, it will allow the SOC team to automate the processes, and it will allow them to respond to threats faster. Secondly, if the SOC team is able to combine DDI threat intelligence and content, and get the context on the emergency or the priority of the threat, then that data can be shared automatically with all the other tools that are connected to the ecosystem, and that will allow them to prioritize the threats and then respond to threats faster. It will also improve the agility, as in it will allow a SOC team or a NOC team to respond, to automate the IT workflows that will allow them to respond to threats faster. And let's say if they want to if there's an emergency request to spin up the additional network, then NOC team can easily do it really quickly by automating the processes. And finally, and the most important one, is the single pane of glass visibility. These days, all the organizations have some tools on-prem, some tools are hybrid, some tools are only on cloud, and it is really important to get centralized visibility into all the things that are going on, all the devices that are present in the network, or all the incidents that are happening, irrespective of whether it is shown on-prem network or cloud network or hybrid network. It is really important to get centralized visibility into everything, so that they can see all the incidents in one place, prioritize the threats, and respond to threats faster. Next, because of this, improved SOC, how improved SOC maturity is important. So I would like to go a little bit deeper into this one. So DHCP server is responsible for allocating IP addresses that can be used to track infected devices, and DHCP can correlate different events related to the same devices under investigation, and then that will make it easy for the SOC team to correlate data from different tools. And then incident response and the scope of reach. So DNS and DHCP will allow operation team to accurately identify the compromised devices and gain visibility into what resources that clients have been accessing. And then finally, the threat actor investigation. So public DNS and domain registration data help understand the scope of adversary and link different events together. So DNS and domain registration data are key data sets in making threat intelligence actionable. And in order to support the complex network and security environment, you need to remove silos and improve real-time visibility. So improved SOC maturity will help customers to get all these things, as in centralized visibility, prioritization for threats, and then it will ultimately allow them to automate the processes. Now, how single pane of glass visibility is important. So it will with IPAM. So it will provide up to date threat intelligence data. It will provide open API so that it is easy for different tools to communicate with each other. And finally, out of the box integration that supports the tools that are either on-prem or on cloud. So it doesn't matter where the devices are located. It is easy for the customers to integrate. If it is easy for the customers to integrate different tools using the API, then they can get a centralized visibility into everything. Next, let's talk about how Infoblox can help. So Infoblox, we have a product called Infoblox Ecosystem Exchange, which will exactly do what we spoke about. So it will break the silo. So it will communicate with different devices, and it will allow customers to integrate devices which are from different companies like Cisco, McAfee. This will provide the faster incident response for the SOC team, and it will improve the ROI for the IT and security teams for the investments they have already made. And it also so in order to make the integration easier, provides inbound and outbound APIs so that the integrations are really easy. It also provides visibility into public and hybrid cloud and integration with tools which are specific to either on-prem or cloud. The APIs make it easy so that integration between different tools are very, very easy. So here is how the integration looks like. So at the middle, you have the grid. So in this case, it is an Infoblox grid, but it can be any other grid. So as you can see, the data is shared. On the top, you can see threat intelligence data. There's a cloud infrastructure which can consist of VMware, Azure, AWS. So it can be public cloud as well as private cloud. So if the data is shared between different clouds through the grid, and this data is also shared with different devices, as you can see at the bottom. So at network infrastructure like switches, router, if all the data is shared through the grid, so grid in this case is a central piece of communication, and then based on what information grid gets, or it can also connect with all the security devices, as you can see on the right. So it can integrate with SIM, vulnerability management, next generation firewalls, next solutions like Cisco ICE and Forescout, and then threat intel platform and firewalls and so on. So basically this infrastructure or this grid, so grid members also exchange DNS information and threat intel data with public cloud as well as with different security tools, and this will allow customers to get centralized visibility into everything, considering grid. Now Infoblox grid or any grid might be a central point of communication, and it has information from all the devices, whether they are security devices or network devices, or data might be coming from different platforms like VMware, Azure, AWS, and so on. So as I mentioned before, on the security side, we have integrations with different security tools such as SIM platform, SIM vulnerability management, NAC, ITSM and ITOM. So recently we introduced the integration with ServiceNow also. And why? So before going into different use cases, I would like to say why DDI data is important. So DHCP has the information on device, more information about the device's MAC address and what was the lease history, where did the device go, and so on. And IPAM has the metadata, which can give information about location, security level, location, and can when this data, and DNS has the information. DNS enables policy-based enforcement, and it has information about the malicious activity, and so all these data when combined. So we have Infoblox has a DDI data, and when we detect some bad device, or let's say we know of an infected device, that data can be shared with so many different partners that we have, and based on that device can take the corrective action. So on the vulnerability management, we have different integration with different types of tools, and these integrations, so we have the DDI data and we share that DDI information with so many of our partners. We have partners like Cisco, McAfee, Microsoft, and then we also have integrations with ServiceNow, ServiceNow, Forescout, Splunk, Rapid7. So all these integration will help the customers to get centralized visibility into everything, and DDI already have the information on the devices and the infected devices. So when this information goes to different partners, depending upon what their functionality is, they can respond, they can get the easy visibility into infected devices, and based on that, they can automate the processes and they can respond to threats faster. And in this case, our goal is to be a Switzerland. So we want to provide all the DDI meaning DNS, DHCP, and IPAM data to different tools, and after that we want to, and other security vendors can leverage that information to make the integration and the data flow easy. And integration can be done using the APIs, and data can be transferred using Stix and Taxi platform. So now let's look at some of the integration use cases. So recently we integrated with Fortinet. So Fortinet has a next generation firewall. So currently the situation is that endpoint, network, and security devices join and leave the network on a regular basis, but there is a lack of easy and timely access to network changes that takes place. At the same time, additionally, companies invest in various security tools designed to address different vectors, but DNS is a gap that traditional tools don't secure. And 91% of the malware uses DNS to carry out the campaign. So DNS needs to be protected against data exfiltration. And finally, different security tools detect threats and create incidents, but they don't work together. Because of this, there's a lack of context, which makes it difficult for the SOC team to decide the priority of the threat. So in order to overcome these challenges, Infoblox and Fortinet have created the integration. So Infoblox has the information on infected devices and new devices that join the organization, and that information is passed on to Fortinet using outbound REST API. And then once Fortinet has that information, it will get the additional context necessary to prioritize the threats, and then they can manage the assets, and then they can automate the remediation. So how this integration helps the customer? First of all, they get the centralized visibility or the visibility into new devices and the infected hosts that are joining the network. Second, because of this, DDI data and information that is provided by Infoblox provides the additional context about the threats, and based on that, they can enforce the Fortinet can enforce the policy, they can manage the assets, and then they can automate the remediation. And finally, based on this, they can improve the ROI because they already have the Fortinet, and then let's say they already have DDI, Infoblox or some other DDI device, and just by sharing the information between different tools, they can improve the ROI for the DDI, for the investment they have already made in Fortinet and DDI devices. So let's look at the McAfee use cases. So we have several integrations with McAfee. So McAfee is one of our strategic partners. So we have integrations. Infoblox has the integration with McAfee, Enterprise Security Manager, Endpoint, EPO, and DXL. So we, as I said, we have the information on which devices are bad and which devices are, let's say, new devices join, or if some infected devices join the network. That information is passed to first of all DXL, and DXL is more like a data fabric, and all the different like SIM vulnerability management or other devices join DXL. So let's say if we detect an infected devices, we pass on that information to DXL, and DXL can, which is connected to different security tools. Those tools can get that information. They can, based on that, they get the context for the threat, and then they can respond to the threats faster. Or if a new device is joining the network, they can enforce the right policy or the right access control for that particular device. Now, similar information goes to EPO. EPO is the endpoint policy management, right? So based on the information that the EPO gets, it can enforce the right policy two different endpoints that are present in the organization. And then finally, ESM gets information from lots of different devices, and we share information with ESM as well. So ESM can correlate different data, and then based on that, ESM has the context on all the data. So ESM is like all the logs are correlated here, and based on that, customer get more information about different events that are going on in the organization. So this is the overall integration. So I won't go into detail for each and every integration because I already explained it on a high level. So in ESM, ESM gets information on DNS queries and IPAM metadata, and then ESM can perform a comprehensive threat data correlation, and then based on that, they can determine the risk for different incidents. And based on the benefit for the customer would be visibility into threat data and IP addresses, and it will be easy for the customers to correlate and prioritize different events that are going on in the organization. EPO, as I explained before, based on the data they get, they can enforce the policy on different endpoints. So automate the processes of policy enforcement. They can make the deployment easy, and then they can orchestrate the DNS threats for faster remediation. Finally, DXL. So DXL, as I said, DXL shares data. DXL is nothing but a data fabric. It can integrate with so many different vulnerability management, SIEMs, next-gen firewall. So depending upon what tools customers have in their organization, DDI data from Infoblox or any other vendor can be shared with DXL, and then DXL, based on what tools it is connected, it will allow customers to automate the processes, and it will allow them to get context information to prioritize threats, and it will improve the ROI for the investments they have already made in the tools that they purchased. So again, DXL is via different. This is via different integration via different API. So, but the benefits remain the same. And then web gateway. So in case of web gateway, so Infoblox has information on which websites are not good. So we can send web gateway based on DNS response, and then McAfee web gateway already has information on the bad website. So you get the additional websites that are bad, so that the protection is improved and customers or employees within the organization can't reach the bad websites. And then it will improve it will improve the protection for the customer who is using this integration, so that none of the employees within the organization can go to the bad website, and hence they won't get a bad malware in their computer, which will infect not only their device but rest of the other devices in the organization as well. So just to wrap it up, why ecosystem integration is important between DDI and security tools, because as I said in the beginning of the presentation, there are so many different tools, but they don't work together. They work in silos. So it is really important to eliminate the silos, and by breaking the silos, and if all the devices are sharing the information with each other, it will give SOC team centralized visibility into all the different deployments, including on-prem, cloud, and hybrid. And this will allow them to get necessary context to respond to automate the processes. First of all, know which threats have higher priority. Based on that, they can prioritize the threats, and then they can automate the IT workflows, and then they can respond to threats faster. If you would like to know more about the Infoblox integrations and partner, please visit our website. We have recently introduced a DNS risk assessment. So all you have to do is go to the website and answer a bunch of questions to see how vulnerable is your organization to DNS risk or DNS risk. So please go to the website. It's a free tool. You just have to answer a bunch of questions. It shouldn't take more than 5 to 10 minutes. And then based on that, you can see how likely is your organization, how likely it has the chance to getting attacked or infected by the DNS data. And then finally, if you want to know more about what is the ecosystem and how it is useful for the organization, just go to the ecosystem infographics that we have created to see how it can benefit your organization. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you, everyone, and back to you, Tim.
Yeah, thanks. So I know you talk about the vast number of tools in your ecosystem, and I know you just used a few examples. Folks, we had a number of questions coming in. What about my tool?
Sure.
What about this? Check out that ecosystem attachment that Chintan was talking about. That's going to be where you're going to find a lot of those answers. We did have an interesting question come through about all of those tools, right? So if you've got a solution like Infoblox and feeding all of these things together, what classes of tools are going to be the ones that are going to give you the most value out of the gate? So let's assume someone says, okay, I've got SIEM, I've got endpoint protection, I've got web gateway, I have all these technologies.
Correct.
What would be the first or second one that you would say, get this thing talking to Infoblox first? It's going to give you the most value.
So based on my experience, most of the customers like next generation firewall is one of them. Vulnerability management is one of them. So for example, in case of vulnerability management, currently scans happen like once a week or something like that. So let's say if scan happened today and right after the scan, if a new device joins the network, it won't be scanned till after 1 week when the next scan happens, right? So with this integration,
right,
whenever a new device joins the network, it will be scanned right away so that if it is infected, it will be blocked right away. So vulnerability management has been one of the good use case that people use for the integration. And then recently we have added 2 integrations with ServiceNow. So if you want to automate the ticketing response, and so ServiceNow is a good use case. And then next solution is also network access control. So integration with Cisco ICE, integration with Forescout, integration with Aruba are the common use cases that people use. So the best part about the ecosystem license is it is really cheap. It is a one-time buy, and once you have the ecosystem license, you can integrate with any number of devices. There is no restriction on that. So it's just buy it once, use it forever, and integrate with any tool. So that is how it works. So back to the question, the most commonly used integrations are vulnerability management, next-gen firewall. SIEMs are also one of the common use cases. So integration with SIEM like Splunk, and then I would say network access control as well.
Wow, that's a broad ecosystem of technologies, and I like how this kind of feeds them all together. As more and more people are looking to automate some of the collection and sorting of data across their enterprise from a security perspective, I hear a lot of conversations around threat management, and people talk about consuming IOCs from given vendors. Does this solution help with any of that as far as like stick speeds and things of that nature as well? Does that play into this architecture?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned during one of my slides, so we have the open API. So we have so let's say there's an indicator of compromise or any bad incident or an infected device. We have that information, and let's say any of the other tool has that information. You can use ecosystem to share that data. For example, let me take an example of DXL, right? So we integrate with DXL And DXL also integrates with Cisco ICE. So let's say if you have either Cisco and lot of devices connect to both DXL as well as Cisco ICE. So let's say if you have this ecosystem solution, it will allow you to exchange information between DXL, Cisco ICE, and that information can then go to so many different devices that I mentioned before. And then as the question was more around the data format, right? So we have the open APIs, which will allow you to integrate different tools easily. And then in order to transfer the data, we support sticks and taxi format currently, which will, and most of the other tools also support this data format. So this will allow customers to easily integrate the data. And just FYI, some of the integrations that we have built, it is not even built by us. Some of the integrations are built by partners. So we have all the information on how to integrate. And let's say if there is a need from a customer, some of the partners said, okay, a lot of customers are asking for this integration using the info. So they use the information we provided to integrate their tool with Infoblox. So yeah, does that answer the question?
No, I think that's a great start. Thanks. I really appreciate kind of drilling in and getting a little bit more clarity. Folks, we've had a number of more questions coming in asking for specific vendor integrations. Again, check out over in the attachments and link tab. There's a lot more to be had on that ecosystem PDF, as well as checking out Infoblox's website. There's a lot more going on in their ecosystem and a lot more integration opportunities out there that we can possibly cover here in just a few minutes that we have left. Now, Chintan, I want to touch on one more question here, and this one comes up often when we're on security briefings, and that is, I understand the value proposition here. This makes my existing tools more effective. It makes my work smarter instead of just harder. What would you say is the leading business case? How are people getting technology such as yours in the mind of their stakeholders and getting buy-in on projects? Because I find that budgets are still tight, talent is still tight. How are you finding folks being successful in driving these business cases?
That's a great question, and it often comes up, as you rightly said. So as I mentioned in one of my slides, so in I think 2017, there was an ESG report, which and they interviewed like over 100 companies, and to ask them about what are their most common security operation challenges and where they are likely to invest money in the future. So I see two problems that come up the most. First of all, the volume of data. Considering there are so many different tools, there is such a huge amount of data or incidents that are generated that it is impossible for the SOC team to respond to each and every incident or check each and every incident. Second of all, so SOC team is already swamped. There is a lack of resources in this area. And let's say if one of the incidents, which is really highly critical, slips out, and if that is not checked, the malware can spread. If the malware enters the organization, if it is not detected on time, it can spread to the rest of the organization, and that will result in company losing large amount of data. So executives are usually really concerned about these things, right? And so at the end of the day, whether they are doing or they have the threat response team internally within the organization, or they outsources to some third party, volume of data is the critical thing. At the same time, they want to make sure that none of the data that is sensitive to the organization leaves the organization. So because of that, they need to automate the processes. It is impossible to just manually look at data from each and every tool and then respond to threats. So automation is a must in this case, because with the introduction of IoT devices, there will be more and more devices joining the network, and there are high chances that infection from one device can go to the other device, and so on. So automation is the only way to contend the threats and then respond to threats faster in the long run, considering I think I read the stats that by 2025, there will be like 200 million IoT devices throughout the world. So consider the organization or even automated home where there are so many different tools. If one device is infected, it can infect the other one if it is not contained, if the threat is not controlled or contained right away. So people are understanding that, and then they know that automation is the only way forward. And in order to automate the processes, different devices have to talk to each other. Without that, there is no visibility, there is no centralized visibility, there is no context, and because of this, there is no it will be impossible for companies to automate the processes because automation requires sharing of data between different tools. So that is how I see it based on my conversation with customers, as well as what I've read in different articles and research studies.
Yeah, so I think that speed is critical, especially as we see more and more data protection and privacy laws coming out with very, very tight incident response timeline requirements for notification and such. So I think that's a fantastic point. And I think that acceleration of response is actually really good, as well as we talked about some of that automation and some of that orchestration. But I also think another valid point is also the quality of the data that you're getting, and this being able to enrich the tools, give more context, I think is definitely also a huge value add. Well, we've got, Chintan, as I mentioned, a lot of people are really curious about whether or not their tools are going to be able to be leveraged with a platform like this. I can't wait until we get into parts 2 and 3 and dig in just a little bit more. But folks, I want to remind you, you see the slide up here. Give us an idea how well we did. Mark your comments. I know we typically shy away from very specific partner integrations and such, but we had some good examples here. As I mentioned, there's more on the way and more currently available. So definitely check those items out. I know it's a start of a new year, which means many of you are also starting to recount your CPEs and such. Those will post automatically as a reminder. But if you want to get, make sure you're getting the latest and greatest from ISC Squared and being notified of these events, be sure to head over to isc2.org/connect. Make sure that your email preferences are up to date. We send out a number of these announcements because we are doing, it seems, 1 or 2 of these a week. There's definitely a lot going on. So be sure you get signed up, get notified, and pass along this link to your colleagues who couldn't make it today. It'll be available for an archived version here shortly after we conclude. And Chintan, I'm looking forward to the next time around. Like you, I'll be enjoying Seattle's rainy weather until then. But everybody, thank you very much for your time. And until next time, I look forward to continuing the conversation. Take care, everybody.